hey man, if things aren't laying themselves out in front of you, the way that is necessary for you to live a full and engaged life and not be cynical and bitter and twisted and cruel and vengeful and disappointed and all of that, it's just possible that you're not aiming at the right thing. And man, that is a question worth asking. Well, it's the question people do ask. It's like, well, what's the purpose of life? Well, it's the same question. What should I aim at? Those are the same questions. And, you know, if what you're aiming at is producing nothing but unrequited misery for you and everyone else, and it's a downhill bloody spiral into something approximating hell, then there is some possibility that you should think that perhaps your aim is off. So, and I don't want to overplay my hand on that either, too, because I know perfectly well that, you know, if you're suffering, if you're depressed, if you're miserable, it might be a consequence of really bad luck. You know, like people get sick, and good people get sick, right? Everyone knows that. You know, good people, they get sick and they die. And so you can't say, well, if you're miserable and sick, it's because there's something, you know, bad about you, because then that would be the case for everyone, always, whenever they get ill, and you could just blame ill people. It's like, well, it serves you right that you're sick because you're a bad person. It happens a lot, actually, with ill people, you know, and it's an unfortunate thing. So I know there's an element of chance to all this, and I don't want to downplay that. You know, we are dust in the wind, to use a terrible cliche from a 70s rock song. We're blown hither and thither by events that are somewhat beyond our control, but that's still not the point. The point is that to a large degree, you can determine the manner in which the world manifests itself to you by changing your aim. And so then that opens up the entire domain of philosophy. You think, what good is philosophy? And people think that all the time. What good is philosophy? It's like, hey, philosophy is about value. Well, what use is value? Well, value determines your aim. Well, who cares what your aim is? Well, your aim determines the manner in which the world lays itself out to you emotionally. Well, who cares about that? No one says that. The argument stops there because no one, especially no one who's been seriously hurt or seriously depressed, like in pain, no one ever says, oh, well, who cares about that? Because if you can say that about your pain, all that means is you actually haven't been in pain. Because if you're in enough pain, you will not say that, that's for sure. So, you need to know what to aim at. So, now you aim at something, you've got a goal, and then you see that you're making progress towards the goal. That's a good thing. That makes you happy. It actually, technically, there's a system, dopamine system, neurochemical system. Same system, by the way, that cocaine and methamphetamine and opiates activate, which is why people like to take those drugs. And it tells you that you're moving forward in the manner that you should be according to the dictates of your plan. Doesn't necessarily tell you whether you have a good plan. That's a more complicated problem, because who knows if you have a good plan. But one thing that you could know is that a plan is better than no plan. That's a really useful thing to know, especially if you're kind of drifting. It's like, well, I'm going to find myself. It's like, no, just pick something and move towards it. And as you move towards it, you're going to succeed and fail specifically. And then you're going to learn something about success specifically, and you're going to learn something about failure specifically. And then you can learn what you use to fix your plan. So a stupid plan is way better than no plan. And you're likely to have a stupid plan, or at least to be able to make one, so that's good news for everybody. You can make a stupid plan, and so I would say, make a stupid plan, and then implement it. Not any stupider than it has to be, you know, you could think about it a little bit, but then implement it, and have your successes and failures along the way, and learn from them, and then you can rejig the goal. You can move the target. That's fine, that's part of the game. It doesn't have to be fixed. It's a movable target. And maybe what you're trying to do is to move the target to an ever better place. So you're moving towards a target, and at the same time you're moving the target, right? And you're trying to move the target towards something like an ultimate ideal. You're trying to find out what that ultimate ideal is, and part of the way you figure that out is by moving towards a target and by learning about success and failure along the way, because then you can inform yourself with regards to what might constitute a reasonable aim. And so that's the reason to go out in the world and like make some mistakes, you know, and then you're going to, and so it's okay. It's okay to make the mistakes. It's not so okay not to learn from them, because then you make the mistakes again. That seems pointless. And so you're moving towards wherever you're going, and it's working, and so you get some positive emotion. You get some motivation from this dopaminergic system that adds zest to life. It adds interest and engagement and meaning to life. It pulls you into life. And that's worth thinking about, I would say, because if you think about it, you know, you might wonder about whether or not you should be engaged in life. And then if all of a sudden you're doing something, and because you're doing it, you get engaged in life, then it seems like that might be the very definition of a good thing. It's evidence. The engagement is evidence that you're actually doing a good thing, a worthwhile thing in life with all its suffering and misery and brutality. It's like you've got a pathway, you've got an aim, you're moving forward, you're engaged. Excellent. Your nervous system, very deep down, this dopaminergic system, it's associated with a part of the brain called the hypothalamus. It's a really, really old part of the brain. It's not some new thing that popped up like 15,000 years ago. It's ancient. It's there to orient you in the world. It's part of the instinct for meaning that I talked about in chapter 7, do what is meaningful and not what is expedient. It's a deep, deep instinct. And way down in your psychophysiological structure, not as far down as the serotonin system, but like next level up. And so if it's saying, hey man, you're on the right track, it's like, that's worth noticing. It's worth noticing. Now you can criticize it out of existence. You can question your aim continually. It's one of the, what would you call it, dangers of our capacity to abstract. But you know, if you're a smart person who doubts, you also might be smart enough now and then to doubt your doubt. And just to notice and to pay attention. And not only that, it's what you need to do, because you need to have a meaning in your life, an aim, a value structure that's of sufficient potency and magnitude to justify the limitations and the trouble that life constitutes, right? This is no trivial business that we're involved in, right? We're all in this up to our necks, literally. It's a mortal game. You're all in. And to play it wrong is to risk suffering in hell. And I'm not talking about afterlife. I'm not talking about something metaphysical. You can generate plenty of hell right here around you. Plenty. An unlimited amount. And so you can move towards that direction, or you can move towards a positive direction. And you can orient yourself. And you can learn. This is why the postmodernists are so incorrect. It's like, look, you need an aim. You need an aim. You cannot organize the way you look at the world without an aim. It's not optional. And then the question is, well, what should the aim be? Well, probably not to radically increase the amount of misery and suffering that you experience in everyone else. I mean, maybe you want to go that route, and people do, but I think they only do when they become bitter and they give up, you know. And they make mistakes they know they're making, right? It's conscious decision to go down that route. It's not like they think that's okay to begin with. Their aim's wrong. It's like, straighten out your aim. So there's an old idea, this idea of sin. Sin is a word that was derived from a Greek word, hamartia. And hamartia is an archery term, and it means to miss the target. And so you think, well, how can you miss the target? Well, you have no weapon. Well, then you miss the target. You have no target. You have no aim. Well, then you miss the target. You don't pick up your bow. Well, then you miss the target. You don't draw it back. Then you miss the target. You don't practice and miss many times, right? Because you have to do that to develop the skill to hit the target. So you're not willing to take the risk to miss. You do none of that. And so you miss the target. And that's the sin. And then you miss your life. And then what happens around you is that Well, there's far more hell than there has to be, and there's much less heaven than there could be, and it's on you.